and I am the Vice President of the College Republicans here at Stony Brook University. Before we begin, let me give you all a brief background of who Ben Shapiro is. Ben Shapiro graduated high school at the age of 16. He had gone on to graduate from UCLA and Harvard Law School. He is the founder and chief of the Daily Wire, a political news website, and the host of the Ben Shapiro Show. His columns are printed in major newspapers and websites such as Town Hall, ABC News, and he has been the subject of articles in the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Associated Press, and the Washington Times. Those are just to name a couple. He's a notable conservative political commentator who defends free speech and open dialogue with lectures on college campuses across the country. As Glenn Beck once said, Ben Shapiro is a warrior for conservatism. His dedication to the Constitution, conservative principles, and fighting political correctness are second to none. He had written his first book, Brainwashed, How Universities Indoctrinate America's Youth at the age of 17, and has since written many books, including his New York Times bestseller, Bullies, How the Left Culture of Fear and Intimidation Silences Americans. Again, I'd like to thank all those who helped make this event possible. Very special thanks to the College Republican e-board, appointees, and all those who are volunteering right now to make this event successful. I'd like to specifically thank some CR leadership, Jeff, Ben, Lauren, and Sarah. Without further delay, on behalf of the Stony Brook College Republicans, it is my honor to welcome Ben Shapiro.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks to Young America's Foundation for sponsoring tonight's lecture, and I'm very excited to be here at Stony Brook. I want to lead off by just making one thing clear, which is that this lecture apparently does not count for credit in your new diversity curriculum, which makes sense since you'll probably learn something at this lecture. Actually, I do want to take a moment before I begin and actually highlight some of the most foolish things about your new diversity plan, which I've had the privilege and pleasure of taking a look at. I'm just going to go through some elements here. SUNY aspires to be the most inclusive state university system in the country. SUNY will identify diversity, equity, and inclusion as essential aspects of system and campus planning and as indispensable characteristics of academic excellence. Really? What kind of diversity what's the political breakdown of the professoriate here, do you think? And also, what does skin color have to do with academic excellence exactly? Say diversity of skin color, what does that have to do with being a great college as opposed to, I don't know, having good students? And what do they mean by equity? Do they mean that you should bear the consequences of your actions, or do they mean that you should shut up if you say something with which the professors disagree? Here's another element of your diversity curriculum. Invite speakers who will cover concepts of inclusion and anti-bias in campus lecture events. Anti-bias, right? Like, for example, it might be biased to imply that all white people are beneficiaries of a magical system and are implicitly racist. That might be a little biased. But I don't think that's what they're talking about. How about this one? Train admissions staff at individual college level in concepts of hidden bias, which is really exciting. It's like Scooby-Doo. We all hop into our magical mystery machine and we go looking for bias. It's hidden. And then we find somebody in a mask and we take it off and he yells at us, "I'd have gotten away with it if it weren't for you damned kids." Sounds like fun? It's requiring all new students to attend a 1-hour course on diversity and a 1-hour course on gender during opening weekend. I can save you some time. We can do this in about 30 seconds, actually. Skin color doesn't matter. Being a good person matters. There's the diversity course. We're done. And here's your gender course. Boys have a penis. Girls have a vagina. There are a few exceptions to this rule, but that is a pretty handy rule of thumb. This one, celebrate diversity on campus through activities, photo choices, and other community efforts. See, this is really actually what this whole diversity shtick is all about. It's you can put a bunch of people who have different skin tones on your brochure, and then you can look really tolerant. And then the administrators can brag to their friends about this brochure so that they don't have to live near any of the people who look like the people on this brochure. I like this one too. I like this one. Identify and implement the necessary processes to allow students, faculty, and staff the ability to use their preferred name, pronoun, and gender identity. Which I think it could be a lot of fun. My preferred name is Bill de Blasio, my preferred pronoun is Z, and my gender identity is communist snowblower. I also heard that you had a really fantastic event here about white privilege at the Humanities Institute. I guess you had an interdisciplinary panel, which is a fancy term for useless people sitting around in a classroom with 10 people in it. And here was the description. In the wake of the election of Donald Trump, a man endorsed by the KKK and white nationalists around the globe, this interdisciplinary panel examines connections between the past, present, and future of racial oppression and white dominance, which sounds like a party. I hope somebody brought a pizza. It just sounds like so much fun. I assume there was a similar event planned about leftist candidates endorsed by the Communist Party who engage in race baiting and lie about racial incidents in order to both cause and then justify riots in America's major cities. Right? I heard that you had, no, that didn't, no? Okay, one more question before I get to the real meat of the comments here. I was wondering if I had already missed the he for she event. Is there a he for she event coming up? I hear that you're one of 2 campuses in the country who participate in this thing. I hope I didn't miss it because I really was looking forward to discussing about upholding the rights of women by embracing the free market and not telling lies about the gender gap and the wage gap. And also stumping for the rights of women in Muslim countries where, by the way, there are no he for she organizations. But I get the feeling that he for she doesn't spend an awful lot of time on those things. Okay, with all of that out of the way, I actually want to discuss where all of this comes from, the talk of white supremacy and mythical wage gaps and diversity of skin color as the highest value. And it comes from a perverse perspective on what mankind is, what people's rights are, and what their responsibilities are. Here's the founding perspective, the founding fathers' perspective on what the United States was supposed to be. Human nature. We'll start with human nature. What are human beings? So the founders thought, compact by saying, sir. And I said, well, but the whole purpose of this debate is whether or not transgender people are actually members of the sex to which they proclaim themselves, or whether they're not. In my opinion, Zoe Tur is not any more a woman than I am. Zoe Tur is a man, and I call men sir when I'm speaking to them. And people are going nuts. You're not respectful to the pronouns, is what they said. First of all, pronouns are inanimate. I don't think they care. But beyond that, so you're not respectful to the pronouns. And that's when I said, well, facts don't really care about your feelings.
Such things if FBI is happening, how far do you go?
Yeah, clear cut answer for you, unfortunately, as far as how far we can go in policing these things. Well, I will say that the Fourth Amendment talking about unreasonable search and seizure doesn't say no search and seizure, it says unreasonable search and seizure. So if you have grounds for suspicion, then there is at least an argument to be made that there should be a higher level of law enforcement surveillance brought to bear. That means that you should be deploying law enforcement. If you're worried about Islamic terrorism, you shouldn't be deploying it at the Swedish church down the street. And the fact is that you should be giving extra scrutiny to not even every mosque, because most mosques don't have terror ties. There are certain mosques that we know have significant ties to extreme Wahhabi Islam or have significant ties to actual terror front groups. And those are the ones where we should be focusing our sort of focus. As far as what the FBI does, what the CIA do, their ability to, we do have to give them a fair bit of credit. In a country of 300 million people, it's very hard to keep track of anyone who could be bad. And it's always easy to see the red flags in retrospect. It's not quite as easy to see them when they're popping up. What that does mean is that the first thing that we have to do is recognize who real friends are in the moderate Muslim community. I think a lot of the groups that have been named moderate or not. I don't think CARE is a moderate group, for example, the Council on American Islamic Relations. I don't think the Islamic Society of North America is a moderate organization. Because moderate organizations are harder to find, a lot of authority figures have it's important to label and figure out which groups are good and which ones are bad, and then to actually take seriously the threat from those groups and keep track of those groups. Now, again, it's a delicate balance because you don't want the government policing every movement by everybody. But I am not somebody who believes that, for example, the TSA ought to be giving the same scrutiny to everybody who walks through the stupid machine. The TSA stinks at everything, just like the rest of the federal government. And instead what they should be doing is employing the exact same methods that the Israeli intelligence used when they screen people for flights, which includes behavioral profiling, which is an actual thing. Right? And yes, monitoring social media. That doesn't mean...
First I want to say thank you for coming here tonight.
Thank you for coming.
Earlier tonight, you said that Asians are the most prosperous ethnicity in America. By what metric are they by
income?
Really?
Yes.
What source?
Well, I mean, that was true as of the census tract from 2010.
Yeah. According to what source do they have the highest?
Census.gov.
Thank you. And also, you said earlier that there's a poll that shows that black people think black people are racist.
Rasmussen poll 2013.
Thank you very much.